Dog's probably thinking.
All right, everybody. It's Sunday morning. Hopefully, everybody's having a wonderful morning. We got an exciting one today. We have a future up and comer who's kind of innovating what kite surfing is nowadays. Camdyn, he's from South Africa, Cape Town, and we're super excited to have him on the show here. Obviously, we got the rock star Gwen, who almost just got attacked by a dog. So tune in. This could get really exciting.
Yeah. If you see me running around, I'm just trying to survive here.
But no, this is an exciting one because Camdyn's kind of this individual who has been pushing the limit in kite surfing, and he kites in a place that's absolutely ballistic, windy, magical place. But he's been playing around with some short lines, so we'll go into kind of short line talk. I'm curious to kind of go in depth with him on wing foiling in Cape Town because that place blows like 50 knots. So I'm curious how many people are doing it there. So let's hear a little bit from Camdyn on his background and give us a little lowdown. Camdyn, thank you so much for being a part of this, and we're excited to have you. So,
no problem. Thanks for having me. So yeah, and if you guys don't know me, I'm Camdyn Kellett. I'm 20 years old now, and I'm from Cape Town, South Africa. And yeah, I've grown up there my whole life. I've spent, let's see, I lived in the same house in the same suburb since I was born, which is pretty uncommon around Cape Town, but it's cool because I get the chance to move around to the different beaches and stuff. We're quite centrally located. And yeah, kiting wise, a couple hours out of Cape Town, we've got a cool spot that's excellent for beginners. And that's where I learned when I was 13, 14 years old. And that spot's, I've always been interested in kiting. Like my dad, I grew up seeing my dad kiting back and forth at that spot. And yeah, I was always keen to get into it. So I was finally when I was 13-ish, I was finally getting old enough to jump out, go, have a few lessons and stuff. And then for the first couple of years of kiting, I was just doing it every holiday, essentially, like nothing too serious, just getting into it. And a few years back, probably 4 years now, when I first started to learn how to do big jumps and stuff, that's when I started getting really hooked on the sport, just pushing myself to go higher and higher. And then I think the breakthrough moment for me was when I pulled my first loop. It sounds a bit funny, but it was like, it's just that feeling of jumping and then getting yanked so hard downwind and just landing super, super hard. I don't know. So it brings out a lot of adrenaline, and that's the thing.
Did I hear Camdyn that maybe your aunt, is it Jules, might have had a little impact in getting into kiting as well? Did she say?
It was.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So wait. Sorry, Jules.
Your Julie, Aunt Julie, does that sound right? Your aunt? I read somewhere that your aunt was said, "Hey, you should do this."
Oh yeah, that was a while back, and that was before I was still a bit young. I was like 8 or 9, and she we were walking down the beach, and it's Cape Town, so there's gonna be kites up whenever. So we saw that, and she pulled me aside and said, "Yeah, kiting looks pretty cool." And my dad's been in it, so she knows him and how he loves it. So it was cool to get.
So you saw it at 8 or 9. You started when you were 13, and now you're 20.
Yeah.
Wow. And just for everybody out there, I'll just do a little chime in here. But when Camdyn says kite loop is when your kite does a full, we'll call it 360 loop in the sky, and you can fly super far downwind, and it's pretty amazing to watch it. But the unique side of what Camdyn's doing nowadays is and we can go really in depth on this.
Oh yeah.
But sizes of lines, obviously you're kind of pushing this demographic of shortening your lines, which makes that kite actually loop completely below you, and the reaction is incredibly abrupt. What are your normal conditions you kite in? Like is it 35 knots? Is it 40 knots? Is it 50 knots? What's your max you've gone out in? Give me kind of a lowdown.
I think my perfect wind would definitely be somewhere between 35 and 45 knots. With short lines, it definitely does kill a lot of the power in the kite. So you do want to take some. You do want to go out in serious conditions, but generally around Cape Town, in season, I guess the wind would be between 20 and 50 knots, depending on the day. Certainly not as consistent as somewhere like Brazil, where it's just blowing every day. But you'll get a good like 3 to 5 days per week in the middle of season of 20 plus knots, which is just incredible for learning. And yeah, with those stronger days in Cape Town, we generally get like 3 to 4 40-knot days. On a good season, we'll have up to 10. It's really good.
And how high are you jumping in those conditions? Like, what's in it? Just so people know, like, what's the
those conditions? Haven't had a woo for a while now, but a thumb suck. I did a big jump, and someone changed direction downwind of me and sent his kite right towards me, and I was just above the kite, and it went straight under. So my biggest jump. I think that was probably my biggest jump.
That's probably like 30 meters high, or
20 plus, 22 plus. Definitely longer than the lines of the kite.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And
Yeah.
So give me the lowdown. So Cape Town, obviously it's one of the kiting meccas. Are you starting to, well, let me pull this back 1 second. If you were to give somebody advice on, I've never kite looped before.
Oh yeah. Okay.
What would be my first step? How do I get started? Do I start in lighter winds? Do I use a smaller kite? What would you recommend?
And actually, maybe also like describe your first experience.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So basically, what my advice would be if you're getting into kite loops, my biggest piece of advice would be don't jump into it too early. You definitely want to be very comfortable on the board and comfortable with doing tricks and little jumps and stuff, landing quite smoothly. With kite loops, especially when you're learning, you got to expect some pretty hot landings. So a great thing to practice is just landings and down loops and that sort of stuff. And like you were saying, the best conditions to practice kite loops in are certainly lighter winds on a medium or larger size kite. And for myself, the first kind of looping trick that I learned was a back roll kite loop. And that's just a back roll mixed with kite loop when you're halfway backwards and you just bring it around and it pulls you back to the landing. Those first few kite loops that I was pulling, that was in 15, 20 knots on a 7 meter back in the day. So nothing serious. You definitely don't want to do it in 30 knots of wind. Otherwise, it'll give you quite a surprise. Yeah. The very first time I tried a kite loop was, I just wanted to try. I didn't really know what I was doing. So I just dumped my board on the beach and body dragged and just pulled a loop to just see. Worst case scenario, I just could go for a splash.
That's an interesting point. You know, that's a very smart move actually, because a lot of people want to always finish the trick or learn the trick before they even break it down. And what you did right there is just breaking it down. You took the board away. So you're like, okay, let's see if I can understand what the kite's going to do. Exactly.
You gotta try work out what to expect. And that's the best way to do it. The safest way to do it.
No, that's great advice. I'm curious, how many people in Cape Town are you seeing wing foiling start to pick up in Cape Town?
There's a couple spots. The main kite beach around Cape Town is quite gnarly for wing foiling, especially when the swell's up. It's a cross-shore wind with quite big swell depending on the day. So you can expect probably, on the big days, you can expect 300 feet of breaking waves. Which is quite intense. You don't generally see too many wingers out on those days. But probably just half a mile inland from Kite Beach is a really good, we call them a flay. It's basically a lake, quite small. And it used to be the windsurfing spot, but it's slowly being taken over by the wingers. And there's more and more. I mean, it's gotten to a point nowadays where it's still a small community. Like there's under 50, I would say. But it's gotten to the point where if there's a breeze at any time of day, you drive past that and there'll be someone on a wing, whether it be a sup or a foil or something. which is
Wow.
pretty cool to see.
That's very cool. Yeah. So next question for you that I think is more my question to you. What is the kite loop or the trick even that you're doing that kind of is one of those? And I only say this because, you know, I've done a few tricks in my life, but I would say there's always a trick out there that kind of like not spooks you, but has a little bit of a like reality check every time you do it, maybe.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you like have to be the perfect conditions, the perfect feeling, the perfect setup. Is there a trick? Is there one that you do a loop that maybe like you know you can do it, but you're a little bit like, you know, a little bit going by
Unsure. Okay, yeah. I mean,
instinct?
I think most definitely it depends on the conditions too. If it's blowing 30 knots, it's definitely more chilled out than blowing 45. And I think taking normal looping tricks, especially when you haven't practiced much in 45 knots, because we don't get even in Cape Town, you'll get 5 to 10 times of blowing 40 per season. So taking kind of any trick like a boogie loop, a double boogie loop, or even kite loop, lay back roll in 40 knots gets your blood pumping. But I think the one trick that I'm quite spooked of, not spooked, but it definitely requires perfect conditions and minimal mistakes, is that what's it? It's an interesting. It hasn't really got a name. It's that kite loop contra loop trick that Ruben Lenton did all the years ago, back in 2008, 2009. Last year I had the chance, the right conditions to give it a go. Just boost as high as you can, pull a kite loop, and then as your kite's coming out of it, you pull a second loop in the opposite direction, like a contra loop. And by that time you're pulling that second one, you're really way on your way down, and you're dropping like a stone because your kite hasn't got much air left in it. But the most important thing in that situation is the height. And once you have the height, if you're high enough, that kite will eventually come and catch you before you pin drop into the water.
Wow.
But,
Well, yeah.
yeah.
So the contra loop. So you're significantly kind of doing 2 kite loops.
Kind of, yeah. It's an interesting one. It definitely isn't, and that's when I'm doing those two, it's on the horizontal plane. So it'll be a kite loop and then a contra loop next to each other, not on top of each other.
Yeah.
That's the next step, I think, which someone's gonna pull sometime in the next few years, because that's one of the last kind of kite movement tricks that's undiscovered, I think. I mean, you can do, and there's endless possibilities. You can do double kite loops the same way. You can do some stuff, but you need the right conditions, and I think you need a few guys who are crazy enough in the next few years.
This is why we had you on, because these are those things that, like, you know, I'm 40, I just hit 40, so I'm like, you know, I don't ever want to do a contra loop. I think Gwen, I'm going to chime in with Gwen here because this is exciting. This one's for Camdyn. So he was out on a foil and he was trying to learn a back roll. He never did a back roll on a foil. And literally his first 10 attempts, he was looping his kite every single time. And he would get his back roll, but he would do a back roll kite loop with a foil. Loop. And I was just like, okay, Gwen, we gotta calm down your backhand.
Well, but I think that was with the one strut contra, which like is much more like friendly to loop. Yeah, so actually we are here in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and we are actually together, Camdyn. I'm just outside and outside of the RV and inside, but we've had pretty in here, and Camdyn have been foiling and using the one strut contra. And I think tell us like what's how did you like the foiling and because you just tried the contra like for the first time.
Yeah, so my first session on the contra was actually just 2 days ago, and the one strut contra, I've always seen it, and I've seen you riding it a bunch, Damien, and that kite looks epic, and I was super keen to try it out. My first impressions of that kite was pumping it up and having it like sitting down on the grass, and it just blew me away how long that one strut is. It's like an 11-meter kite, but the size of the arc of the kite is like a 9-meter, but because of that one strut you have so much more canopy. And yeah, flying that kite, it has a weird shape in the air, like a weird shape, but I liked it. I quite like it. And and it definitely flies interesting. It doesn't fly anything like the original Contras, but it flies insane in light winds. I mean, you were saying it earlier, Gwen, like you can relaunch that kite in wind that's too light to actually ride in. It's an incredible kite, and it's goes with the
and
foil
then
perfectly.
and then you was it the first time you would do the walk the dog?
Yeah.
Because you saw Damien, you said you saw Damien like doing it, and then you were like, I'm gonna try it.
So 2 days ago at the demo on my first session, the wind was pretty gusty, so it was between like 8 miles an hour and probably 15 plus. So you'd be riding with just enough power to just keep going, and then all of a sudden a gust would hit and you'd be super lit. And one thing I wanted to try was that walking the dog. So it's essentially kind of a kite loop. It's like a down loop, except you bring a kite low to the water and then just touch the water with your kite, and you keep speeding around the kite and then relaunch the kite on the other side and just keep riding. And it felt super cool because that kite relaunches like nothing.
And you got it. You nailed it on your first times, I'm sure.
Well, I think it was the second try, but yeah, it was impressive. It was super cool.
Yeah, we got it filmed, so you guys will see it in the episode of every stop we produce an episode of the Cabrina tour. So when it will come time for the once and episode, you guys will see the Walk the Dog by Camdyn. And if you want to learn how to do it, we also have a video where Damien teaches you how to do it.
Yeah, it's a cool feeling. It's a cool trick. I'm stoked for you, Camdyn. We had a good question come in from Dan. Do you think wing foiling is going to take people away from kite surfing, kind of as kiting did from windsurfing? What are your thoughts there? Or
that's a good question. I think certainly maybe in some spots. I've seen a lot of, at the same time, I've seen a lot of people. I just spent the last three or 4 weeks in Hood River now. And in places like Hood River, there's a big mix of older kites, which is awesome. And I've seen a few people, and I've spoken to quite a few people on the beach, and winging's just been taking off there. And I think the reason is just because it's quite a lot less complicated than kiting. You just need your 2 pieces of equipment, just your wing and your foil. You don't need as much space to launch, and if anything goes wrong during your session, you just let go of the wing, and it's full D-power, it's as safe as it can get, really. So I think that is super appealing to the more conservative kiter, I guess. And I think it may take a few kiters away, but at the same time, it's in a different spot. Like for instance, in Cape Town, you're not going to have too many people switch over because of the conditions, really. I would say, like in some places, you get the lake around Cape Town, but there's not too many places apart from that where you'll be able to wing easily in Cape Town. So somewhere like Cape Town, not as much as somewhere like Hood River, I think.
Yeah, Camdyn, I think you're spot on. And Dan, I'd just chime in too. I would say, I actually think wing foiling is going to bring more people into both sports. And the only reason I say that is kite surfing is always, I've been doing it over 20 years. And the thing that I realized, and after, call it 10 years doing it, you kind of forget that like fear of just looking at it. And it's like so much, the kite's way away from you, and there's people around. And like, we forget that's intimidating. And that is still intimidating to people. Yet when you look at a wing foil, you're like, oh man, I'll give that a shot. I mean, it looks a little bit simpler. And then, there's certain areas that'll make it easier to maybe access versus a kite, setting up. We've talked about this many times before, but I think if anything, wing foiling is going to help grow both in my eyes, because it's going to pull new people in. It's going to pull new, foiling surfers into it, because now they can foil surf when there's, maybe that's all they do is surf, but now they can foil surf when it's windy and use a wing. So I think if anything, it's going to, I think, Camdyn, you nailed it with certain areas. Like Hawaii right now is very wing. A lot of people winging. Hood River, a lot of people winging. A lot of places people are trying different things. But I could see, like, even myself, like if I went to Cape Town, it's blowing 35. When you say 35 is mellow, I'm like, holy jeez, because like 35 for me is like nuclear here. But I look at like 35 to 45, like I don't know, winging. I mean, riding swell, got it. Jumping, forget about it. I want to be on a kite, and I want some, I want a canopy above me, because winging, when you're boosting massive on this little wing, it kind of is freaky dropping out of the sky.
You come down pretty hard.
Yeah, exactly.
I would love to see someone. I'm sure there's going to be someone this season sending it out off a kicker in Cape Town doing a massive backflip or something.
Oh yeah,
there's going to be some new tricks coming out, I think. It's just like kickers with kiting. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah, I think in the end, like, I mean, when kiting like started and everybody was windsurfing. In the end, if you look back, like kiting did. I mean, I would say just it was a new way to enjoy like conditions that maybe would not be ideal for windsurfing. So like that's what winging is. I think we shouldn't be like like hating or scared, or it's just like a new way to enjoy condition and places where maybe kiting is not ideal, and that's good. That just means like we're gonna be able to even have like more fun in this kind of condition. Maybe in a safer way or things like that. So
yeah,
I think it's all like positive. It's a new sport, and it's just opening new opportunities to have fun in different type of conditions.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And one thing I want to just chip in quickly is when I had my first few wing foil sessions in Hood River over the last couple of weeks, and there's new spots that have opened up out in the gorge just pretty much for winging. I mean, you have windsurfers and stuff, and that's the thing about winging which makes it so accessible. Like even if you're in the middle of a gorge and there's a rocky coast, you can take your wing, you can take your foil board and just jump out into the water and paddle a few strokes out and have enough wind to go without having to set up any lines, get any launching going. It's a lot easier to pioneer some new spots, which is quite cool as well.
Yeah, that's well said. That's incredibly well said. I'm going to do this for all the young rock stars out there, because you're kind of leading that charge. What size lines are you running on your kites right now with your short line loops? And you don't have to say specifically if it's like a hidden little thing that's yours, or if there's something you're playing with. I think the smallest I've ever been on was like 9.
Okay, well that's pretty crazy. 9 meters that was also, yeah. So when I first got into it, I saw, I think like Thomas Burbley's and Steven and all those guys, Philip, Zach, just going crazy on Instagram a couple years ago. And I took one of my old bars to the Cabrina shop in Cape Town, and I was like, hey guys, can you throw on some short lines? And they're like, yeah, what's do you want? And I had no idea, so I just said anything. So my first set was a set of 9 meter lines, which was definitely a big difference from what I was used to. I remember the first time I took that out and pulled a loop, it went straight level with me and sent me into a late rotation, and I just completely lost track of where I was. But right now, over the last few seasons, I've been experimenting, testing out the different lines lengths. Like when you're at 10 meters, 1 meter like length difference, it can make such a difference, because it's just like, it just changes the way the kite flies so much. So at the moment, I'm busy playing around between. I got a new set of lines recently, which has a base length of 8 meter lines, and then I've got a bunch of extensions ranging from 1 meter to 5 meters, so I can just switch it up, play around, and get just about any line length I want, up to about 18 meters, which is quite cool. But currently, when it's less windy, I'll take 12 meter lines, just because it gives you a little bit more power to get that height that you need. But when it's absolutely nuking, I'll take 7 meter. Usually I take a switchblade, and 10 meter lines, and yeah, just go throw some loops.
Here's what I'm saying. I'm going to go on record. Ready? Here we go. I say we got to get Camdyn a 7 meter one strut in 40 plus knots. I think your contra loop is going to happen, because that thing will just pivot and spin.
That thing will pivot for sure.
It'd be pretty wild to see what happens there. So we'll follow up on that one. Gwen can can make sure we capture that one, because that would be pretty wild. And maybe it'll go into like a 3 loops or something. Who knows?
Yeah, that could be interesting. I'm keen.
If you were to, anybody listening to this, if you were to say like, I'm nervous to get into kiting and I'm just not really sure if this is for me, like what would you say would be your best advice to somebody who's just on the fence to try this? What would you say to them?
Definitely. The thing about kiting is it's definitely not for everyone. And if you've had like bad experiences or something, or if you are kind of a bit unfit and a bit kind of not as adventurous, it can be quite a big struggle. And I've seen a few people who just aren't really the fit. And you'll be like looking at kites, and you'll see people on the beach, and you'd be interested. Like if you're not into sorry, let me try that again. So like if for kiting, when you're getting into it and you're quite nervous but you're still keen, that's a good sign. If you're nervous and you're unsure and you just don't want anything to do with kiting, it's possibly a sign. But I think with like when you're getting into it, the best thing is to just go for lessons. And if you've just passed the lessons and you are still a bit unsure, you're not kind of confident in yourself, and you want to take the next step. What I did, I used to be like that a few years back. The first few years after I learned how to kite, I was a bit nervous before. I was very nervous actually before every session. And I would be like, I'd always make excuses to not go, and I was like just unsure. I hadn't really been hooked yet. And the one thing that got me super comfortable and quite confident was taking my absolute smallest kite, which was a 5 meter at the time, and going in wind that was just enough for the kite to fly in, and just taking it on the beach and playing around. And that really got my confidence up, because I knew exactly where the kite was going to pull me in the window and how it felt when it was falling out the sky. And I was talking to Gwen yesterday, because the wind was 2 days ago, the wind was very up and down and people's kites were falling. And mine, because I spent so much time on the beach playing around, I know exactly how to keep a kite in there, because I'd always play around in wind which was way too light to kite in. And that's one thing I'd recommend to just about anyone. Some people call it horseplay, but that's when you go a bit too wild to doing jumps and stuff. But taking a kite on the beach, a small kite, and just flying it around, that's the thing that sorted me out when I was nervous when it came to kiting.
That's an awesome, absolutely awesome point. And I think everybody out there listening, this is definitely a key point, because even in wing foiling, kite surfing, even myself, I could say I was the same way, Camdyn. I could fly the kite. I was body dragging. This is a long time ago, but when I put the board on, I was like, man, this is just really hard and it's not that fun. I can't really stay up on it. And I kind of was like, I don't know if I really like this. And I think if you just kind of keep that challenge going, there's like a point where you just like, then it's just becomes incredible. And
yeah,
sometimes people maybe say goodbye to it too soon. And I would say even with wing foilers that are learning out there, like both of these sports are challenging. They take time. And I think, you literally said the best tip that you could give to anybody. And that is, whether you're on a wing, whether you're on a kite, go to the beach and fly it in all those hard, almost impossible conditions. And the reason why is it's going to give you kite control, wing control, to another level that'll help you incredible amounts. I mean, a lot of people, we always kind of would laugh at a lot of people that learned in Hawaii, where it was blowing 30 plus, every day. They'd come to Florida and they like can't even kite, because they're just so used to getting pulled. Just versus in Florida, you have to learn how to like make wind. So it's a different realm, but that's a great tip to everybody. Gwen, do you have any tips for people on that side of things?
Yeah, I mean, just to remember that, like, kiting and winging is like so weather dependent, and so it's hard as a beginner to find your mark and find like consistency, because you go out and maybe it's too light. I mean, we see that all the time, even during demos. We have had like quite some light wind, and people go out and they are not very successful. But they come back, and I just like tell them, like, like right now it's like It's very light wind. It's very gusty, and so you just don't like get frustrated about that. Just keep going out, and ideally, like, yeah, you would have like perfect condition, but that doesn't very rarely happen. So like just keep at it, and every time you go out, even though you might not feel like it was successful, it's incredibly like beneficial, and it's something out of it. So I think just focus on like time, put in the time, and judge by was it a successful session or not. It is, and you are getting something out of it every time.
Every time.
And being 20 now, Camdyn, what do you like? What are your goals for the future here? I mean, do you have like a vision or something that you want to do that kind of
that's an interesting one. Right now, my plan for the last couple of years was, so I spent my last year of high school at the World Class Academy, and a few people may recognize that name. I'm not going to get into it too much because that's a whole podcast on its own. But it's basically a kiteboarding traveling high school. And once I'd finished up, my last semester was in Italy, and that's where we graduated. It was at ProKite Albirondina's place. And after that, I decided, like, cool, I'm keen to go to college. I'm keen to go to university and study something. But I've spoken to a bunch of people, and almost all of them have recommended taking a gap year or taking a few years to figure your life out. And I'm in that point right now. I don't really know where I'm heading. But I was going to take last year off and do a bunch of traveling, but unfortunately that didn't really work out for a few reasons. But I'm basically extending that gap year till this year, and possibly the next couple of years. I'm going to spend the next few years kind of traveling, experiencing a few things, and finding out what I want to do, what I want to study, if I need to study, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I would say, to make you feel better, Camdyn, at that age, it's a normal thing. So you're okay. Don't stress. You will definitely find the perfect path for you. And I can only see where you're going to go, and it's going to be really awesome. So it's exciting.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah. So Camdyn, now, you ride with Cabrina. Like, tell us, like, what does it take in today's world to become a rider for a brand?
Okay. So, like, the way it works, I've had quite a few questions about it over my time. And it definitely takes dedication, I guess. If you have that, then everything else that comes with it is easy. You do have to spend a lot of time pushing yourself to do things that you aren't really used to doing. So, like, generally before, I wasn't spending much time on social media and that sort of stuff. And getting a name for yourself is really important. And kind of putting yourself out there, whether it be on Facebook or YouTube or Instagram, whatever. And it's just a good way for people to start knowing you. And having a following on Instagram or on socials is very valuable to just about any company, because you reach as many people and with the products as possible, really. And the thing is, it definitely takes time, and you work your way from the bottom. So I started 3-4 years ago when I started getting quite serious into kiting. I couldn't really afford new gear every season and stuff, and I was going and breaking a couple kites, doing a few stupid things. So I met up with the shop in Cape Town, the Cabrina shop, and we chatted and we organized that I would have like a sponsorship. So they sorted me out with a discount at the shop, and that's generally how you start off. You go to your local shop, you go to your local distributor and chat to them, because they have the contacts already, and they've most likely got the experience to help you out in the best way, I guess. And then after a few years of riding with the shop, I got to do a bit of traveling. I met up with most of the team, the UK team, in the kitesurfing armada a couple of years ago, and that's where I got to chat to most of the guys from the team. And it's all about contacts and just starting from the bottom, working your way up. And yeah, I'm happy with where I am now, but I'm definitely pushing myself to go as far as I can.
No, that's a great question and great answers, Camdyn. I would say for everybody out there, look, you said it the best. Start with your local shop, and as you grow, and the goal for any business or anybody that's looking to make it or make a career in anything you do, it's always about how you can benefit the business, and it for sure helps to be a good person and a good athlete, good on social, because obviously that's helping draw new customers to that brand. And I think what you said is spot on for anybody that's looking to, make a name for themselves and have fun doing it. Because if you don't have fun doing it, I think it, kind of like what you said, you weren't really doing a lot of the social media stuff, but once you kind of started doing it, it, became okay. And maybe it's still not your thing, or maybe it's not something you want to put all your time in. You'd rather be on the water, but the value of it. And I think that's super important for people that are coming up. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and Damian, like, how was it like? Because I feel like in today's world, like, things are very different. I mean, we especially now with COVID, we don't have like that many competitions. So how do you get noticed? But how was it when you started, Damian? Was it social media was not as big, so like it was a different strategy to be noticed.
That's true, actually.
Yeah. So Camdyn, this is how much it's changed. When I started, there was one guy, Elliot LeBeau. He was the guy who made the videos, right? They would come out like a year later because it was like, so you had to be with this guy who shot the videos in kite surfing, because then you would be the cool guy sort of in the videos, right? Because
was he associated with a brand, or what?
He was actually with Gabrina at the time. He was a professional in the very beginning and just got into video and did stuff. But I just remember watching videos and was like, man, I want to do this. So I would study these videos, right? And I'd learn all the tricks. Then I'd show up, and like wherever I would go, it was like they were a year ahead, right? So like here I'd watch these videos show up. I'm like doing these insane board offs, and it was like the start of handle passes. And I was like, what is this? Like I didn't see this, but I would say it was exactly what you still said before, and that is connection. So you still got to surround yourself with the right people to kind of open those doors. And really it came down to, doing it. I wanted to do it. I loved it. And I was passionate about it. And you just work hard at it, and slowly those doors will open. And I would say, you're going to go through ups and downs and frustrations and whatever it may be. But I would say nowadays, I actually would say it's 100%, like a million times easier. But it's actually hard because you got to be unique, because nowadays everybody's got tons of content up there, but how do I make it unique so that I'm seen, right? Or I stand out. And that's really hard for people, I think, to kind of come up with that creativity, because so much has been done. And I think, I would just tell anybody out there, just be yourself or be creative, try to make it fun, exciting. And I think that will lead to a lot more. But yeah, to answer your question, Gwen, back then it was pretty much, there wasn't social media. So all it was magazine, which came, months later. And then video was the big one. Video was like, oh man, you got to be in the videos. But yeah, I'll never forget my first event. I showed up, I'm like doing board offs and everybody's doing the handle passes. And I was like, well, that was awesome. that went well. I like lost in the first heat. It was like, okay.
Oh man,
that's how it goes. Yeah.
So, but then, there are like some sports where like, you can just be a pro athlete, but what about like in a kiting industry, in a winging industry, like as a rider, like do you have to be like do a bit more for the brand to be so kind of an asset? Like what's like what do you feel? What do you think about that, Damian?
Yeah, I mean, look, I first and foremost, I tell anybody out there that's looking to make a career in anything you do, the most important thing, enjoy it. Like enjoy the process, enjoy the learning process, because if you don't enjoy that, it will always become work. I mean, all these athletes say that their business is work. It is work. It becomes work, but you still got to enjoy it as best as you can. But I would say the most important thing is, I think Camdyn said it really well, but, connections, always be cordial to everybody. Look to see how you can help a brand, just like Camdyn started with a shop. the more you can help somebody that's closest to you in that industry, that person will know somebody more, and it grows and it grows and it grows. And you will definitely grow if you're this person that's more motivated than somebody else. I actually think, I mean, a perfect example actually is Gwen, who's sitting here traveling the country in an RV for Cabrina because he showed up super amped and just loved the sport and had this passion. And here he is, he's like traveling around the country in an RV with all these pro riders like Camdyn. I mean, who would have known that would have happened? You know, so
2 years ago, I know.
so that's, you know, you never know. It's just things like this, you know, and even Camdyn right now, who came all the way from South Africa. He's in Wisconsin right now, and he's probably going to travel across the U.S. with Gwen and RV. How do these happen? These are these connections that slowly build into things. So, you know, I would just tell everybody out there, look, always, you know, don't ever hesitate to ask. I would say that's like my most valuable tip to anybody is just, look, you never know until you ask. So if you really want to be a part of something, you know, just start working on it. How can I help? How can I help better your brand? How can I be a part of it? Can I do some demos? Can I work for you guys? You know, a lot of times that's what opens the doors to more opportunities. So that would be my 10 cents.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna wind things down here, Camdyn. We always end on a note. We try to inspire people, motivate people, because, you know, obviously it's a weird time in our world right now, and we're lucky to have you in the States, and we're hopefully this, you know, Delta thing kind of stays on the minimal, but we'll see what happens worldwide. We just pray for everybody out there. But is there anything that you'd want to leave on to inspire people, or to kind of give them just a message that maybe you live by, and, you know, can help somebody that's maybe going through a hard time or wants to try to kite or do whatever it may be? What's your, like, a little tip you could give them or advice?
One thing I would always just say, just try get out there. For me, at least, being out in the water is one of the most healing things I can get. So being out there in the water, that's what I'd recommend. Just try to get out there and have some fun.
Gwen, you want to add in there? I think that's perfect, Camdyn. That's exactly mentally, physically, you need releases in your life, and whatever it may be, whether it's going for a walk or throwing 50 knot kite loops.
Yeah, in the end, like, I feel like, you know, doing the demo, like we see like all sort of like conditions and everything, but in the end, every time you go in the water, even if it's not ideal, and even if before you go in the water, you think like, oh, this is gonna, you know, be crappy and whatever, but you always come out of the water and you are like, you know, more stoked than, you know, before you went in the water. So it's like, it's, you know, don't wait for like everything to be perfect, and that applies to anything in life. Just go do it, and then, like, once you get going, you're gonna have some fun. So if there is something that you really want to do, don't wait. You know, I mean, same with when we film videos, you know, with Damien. Like, you know, if we would wait for everything to be like perfectly like lined up, we would come out with like 2 videos a year, you know. But instead, we just, you know, we make it happen, and in the end, we are stoked, and in the end, we, you know, so that can apply to anything. Go out there, do it, and don't wait for things to be perfectly lined up. You will the way, for sure.
Yeah, I would just end with that with Gwen there, but I would say, you know, you guys say it the best, but I would say, you know, your mental health is just as important as anything else you do. So if you want your work to be good, your relationships to be good, whatever it may be, you need some kind of release in some way that's maybe athletic, or just seeing nature, or, you know, whatever it may be for you. Don't take that away from your life, and make sure you add it, because it'll add value in happiness, mental stability, and a lot of these things that I think we forget about. Everybody always thinks, oh, I got to make so much money to do this. And it's like, well, if mentally I'm not there, and I'm, we'll call it volatile in my head, you know, you'll really struggle to do everything. So, you know, your mental health is super important. I think even more now than ever, because of social media and the way things are changing. I think there's false values of what people think life is, or what people are living. A lot of this stuff that you see on social media is not quite as real as you may think it is. and reality is your life right here in front of you. So get out and go see the world and enjoy it for what it is, versus trying to create some thing that's maybe not reality. So live and get out. And I think Camdyn, being out on the water for you is your solitude. And
Exactly.
and Gwen, he lives by that 24/7. I mean, he'll text me at like 3 a.m. drinking coffee, like, hey, I'm ready to get out.
Well, actually, there's something very interesting, like, because we have been traveling on the Cabrina tour and going to like tons of different spots, and in the end, when it comes down to is the people, and this is what I think is giving you the best experience out of every spot. Is not the spot itself, is not the wind, or the kind of content, the people you are with, and so I think just make sure like you surround yourself with people you enjoy, and I think this is the most like valuable. If you are with like the people you enjoy to be with, you could be anywhere. But if you are like in a perfect place and you don't have these people, then it won't be like the best. So like, yeah, surround yourself with good people, like we are
right
now.
here, right now. We're excited. We get to hang out with Camdyn and Gwen. Gwen, you're so stoked to be traveling with that little legend right there. I'm like bummed. I want to learn all this stuff from him right now. I'm like, here in Florida, there's thunderstorms. There's like no wind. Oh man, it's brutal. But well, look, everybody out there, look, we thank you guys. We love you guys. We appreciate all the support on the channel. We're just doing this to help people and stoke people out and, have them live their best life in this interesting time, and have these amazing people, pro riders like Camdyn, and who are truly leading the sport, who vision things that you're like, wow. I mean, I personally don't really want to loop my kite like that and then loop it like that. I like, just doesn't really like, I think it's awesome. I'm 100% down, Camdyn. I'm stoked for you. But this is what our world's about, is challenging yourself and getting out and living. So on that note, we thank you guys so much. We're actually going to switch over to our Patreon live feed, where we're going to talk to all the people that are supporting us. So we really appreciate that. Everybody who's supporting our channel. We're just doing this to, create more content, more information for everybody. And again, we're super excited to have Camdyn here. Make sure to follow him. The dude's a rock star. He's got a big future, and he's actually going to be Wisconsin. Then you guys will be in Hood River here coming up, right?
Yeah, back in Hood in the next couple of weeks, I think. Yeah, should be cool.
Yeah,
It'll be epic.
Pretty soon.
So you guys can meet him in person in Hood River.
Yeah, guys, come to Hood. It's awesome.
Yeah, for everybody out there, we didn't mention at the beginning, but we now have a podcast. So if YouTube is not your thing, then make sure to check out our podcast. It's basically the same episode, but coming out in a podcast version. And then, yes, if you want to support this YouTube channel, head out to Patreon for as little as $5 a month. You support what we do. And then what you get in return is early access to our weekly videos and exclusive private chat with our guests. So that's what we're going to do right now. And if you want to be part of it, you go in a link below in the description to sign up for Patreon. And then you can ask all of the questions you want to Camdyn today and to our future guests.
Awesome. Well, we love you guys. Camdyn, thank you so much. We're going to chime over into the other chat, and everybody out there, have a wonderful Sunday. And thank you so much for tuning in, and make sure to follow Camdyn and Gwen on adventures, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Awesome. Gwen, Damo.
You guys, thank you.